So Dieter, I see you there. Are you, I just want to ensure your audio and video is working. Or your audio at least. I guess you don't have to turn your video on if you don't want to. Okay.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Watson, I know yours is working because I heard you in previous sessions today. So, all right. So it is on the top of the hour, so we will go ahead and get started. And I know we're missing a few key participants for this session, so we'll see how this goes. Welcome to the NTP Working Group meeting at IETF 111. Dieter and I are your co-chairs. So first of all, here is the IETF Notewell. You will have seen it in several sessions before, and you will have agreed to it when you registered for the meeting. This contains all of the policies of the IETF. And so please take note of it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Dieter or myself or Eric Klein, who is our area director. This is our draft agenda for the day. With that, on the do we have any agenda bashing? Do we have any additions or deletions from the agenda? Okay. Dieter has agreed to take minutes. So with that, we will go with him doing the minutes. He's going to use the COMEDI note taker, so anybody can contribute as we go along. Is Rich here yet? Oh, yes, Rich is here. Okay, great. And with that, we will move to our sort of working group document status review of where we are. So these are our currently accepted working group documents. The NTP port randomization document is in the RFC editor queue. As a reminder to those of you who don't participate regularly in the IETF, there is a you can join a queue if you want to ask any questions. So be sure to do that. Anyway, so back to the documents. The port randomization document is in the RFC editor queue. The other documents are in various stages within the IESG. The interleave modes, you all will have seen a lot of mailing list discussion. Miroslav is not on this call, I don't think. Let's see, has he joined us yet? Nope. So there's a couple of issues with the interleave modes. The first one being that I need to update the Shepherd write-up. Apparently I have overwritten the original one, and the one that's there is the wrong document. So I need to recreate it. And then the second one is to address the stuff that's on the mailing list. I don't want to put you on the spot, Eric, but did you have any specific guidance associated with that, or?
There's one other thing, and I think there's the IETF IPR assignment or something stuff since 5905 predates whatever the latest copyright assignment. Maybe not IPR, rather. Sorry, copyright assignment. I think it was a comment that was. It shows up if you run the ID nits in the data tracker for the document. But we can talk about that separately. I don't know what other documents that have updated 5905 have done about that, but it was called out to me when I tried to bring it to the IESG.
This is the first I've heard about this issue, and we've certainly had a number of updates to 5905 since then.
Okay, maybe we can sail through on on established precedent.
Okay.
As for the other things, You know, yeah, I don't know. Because of the other objections, I sort of deferred the document from the telechat, so we didn't get a chance to see how many other members of the IESG were bothered. But the early feedback was just a lot of people that seemed to be very concerned about whether or not this was actually safely deployable. What was how I generally interpreted those comments. Others may have read them differently.
I guess the question I had on all of those comments was, does that mean, there seemed to be some confusion about, or not confusion, there seemed to be some indecision about whether we needed to take it back to the working group to address them, or whether the IESG needed to have an internal conversation first so that they could provide us guidance, and then we could take it back and address them. So that was sort of the two state that I was in, and I haven't figured out.
I didn't get the sense that the feedback that was coming in had guidance of the form, if you just do X, Y, and Z, then it'll be fixed. It seemed to be a little more, I don't see how this can possibly work, which kind of implied to me that we needed to figure out some way to show more clearly that it was safe.
All right.
I know that the document has basically like what you can do in 3 different modes, and in each one of those modes it says, you know, a legacy situation. If a node doesn't understand interleaved, then this is what happens. I had wondered whether or not maybe there should be a document up front that sort of says what the fallback scenarios are and why this is not why this is perceived to be safe. I don't know what other people feel might address things, but I think we probably do. I don't know if we need to pull it all the way back to the working group. It depends on whether or not we're going to change anything. If we're going to change something, I think we do. If we're just going to like add a clarifying paragraph here or there, then probably we don't.
Yeah, I just thought one of the IESG members, somewhere in all of those comments, I thought there was something along the lines of, if he was in the rough with respect to the rest of the IESG, and I guess that's why I was thinking that the IESG needed to have a conversation to see if you all were all on the same page, or if we needed to propose a solution back. And I know I should.
We could do that. We could take it to the IESG and see what everyone else says. Maybe it was just Rob and Warren and Ben abstained. So maybe I don't think anybody else jumped in with comments really prior to my having deferred it to address what I thought the other issues were. But
okay.
we could just bring it back to the IESG and see what happens and deal with the fallout thereafter.
Well, okay. So perhaps then what we really ought to do is maybe not pull it all the way back, but I think you originally suggested we need to address the comments a little bit more solidly and leave it where it is.
I'm wondering whether or not there's like adding a clear section that says, here's why this is operationally safe to do up front, and not have it interspersed with various modes sections might have provided a clearer thing to point to that says to allay people's fears from the get-go.
Yeah. So I mean, setting aside my personal oppositions to the document, it seems like the logical course forward is that the working group should first address the feedback as far as consensus exists, and then from there figure out whether it has enough no objections to pass or not, and determine a course from there.
Okay.
Well, it definitely won't have enough no objections to pass yet because it didn't get everybody else's feedback. But I think, yeah, if we tackle the feedback that we got now, we will satisfactorily, we'll be able to forestall all of the other comments that basically say, yeah, I agree with Warren and Rob. I agree, that kind of thing.
Okay. So we will circle back to Miroslav and see if we can do a better job of addressing those comments in a coherent manner. So the second one that's in IESG stages is the Yang data model, and I think that's waiting on an update from the authors, and that's coming. I think he has communicated that. So, and the third one is the Mode 6 commands, and that one is waiting on a conversation with Brian, and that's also coming. So I don't have anything new to update on either of those two. Any questions on those three documents? We have two open working group calls out of our virtual interim meeting a little while ago. One was a last call on the alternative port document. I think there was a fair amount of discussion on that probably needs to be discussed in more detail with an updated document. And Miroslav is not here. I don't know if anybody wants to specifically address the alternative port document. The second one was the adoption call for the update registries. This was a pretty quiet adoption call, but we didn't get any opposition. Is there any opposition at this stage to adopting this document? Okay, Rich, did you have anything you wanted to say specifically related to this document?
I can, when you say it's been adopted, I'll rename and submit, and then we can discuss. I think there's one or two open issues about whether or not we want to partition space, number space into 3 different categories: expert review, standards tracker, so on.
Okay.
But that's just general working group discussion on it.
Okay.
So that was mostly Rich and I disagreeing on that. I think I favor adoption of the document regardless, and we can hash that out afterwards.
Same here.
Okay. All right, excellent. So we will we'll send out a message and change that state to being adopted hopefully this week.
Cool.
So don't think we did a. Oh, sorry. Oh, hit too many times. All right, so next up is rough time. And as I believe, Watson, you are going to share.
No. Wait. I guess we're okay.
And I'm going to leave the stage to you.
All right. So it looks like everybody's seen slides. Okay, great. All right, so this is an update on the draft status for IETF 11 held in, well, your living room once again. So first, I want to talk a little bit about rough time overall. This is, I realize it's been a working group item for a while, but I think it's useful to review why we're doing this, as this has been a question in some of the comments I've got in the mailing list. So it's certificate transparency for time. There's lots of applications, X509 verification, Kerberos keys, etc., which need a rough idea of the time. They don't need to be microseconds or milliseconds accurate. They're fine with a few seconds. They're dealing with minutes or days or weeks, but they need to have a high degree of confidence in the honesty of the servers. And getting this sort of application out there is going to have a big impact on security. It's a huge fraction of certificate errors are due to misset clocks, and so we're training users to click through. Get that rate down, and you can start thinking about certificate failures being a hard stop. And the rough time protocol doesn't decide for applications what they're willing to accept. It says, okay, here's the time, and here's the uncertainty interval caused by network delays. And it's up to the application to decide if that's good enough for the purposes they're looking at. So this is very different from NTP, where the application really isn't interacting with NTP at all. It's the time's getting set on the computer and just needs to trust that time. And usually there's very little explicit modeling of the accuracy you're deriving from NTP. So now let's talk about the documents. So one of the things that's happened is we've split up the documents into two for easier progression and sort of being able to hammer out a bunch of details on the wire format and implementations and get things off the ground while leaving some of the ecosystem things that are less well defined and need a lot more input to later. And so this has been a way to sort of make the burden manageable. So the first draft is draft IETF-NTP rough time 05. This is very narrowly focused on the communication between servers and clients. So Marcus and I have sat down, have written implementations, have pointed them at each other, and they worked, and we just looked at the spec. We did not, and things we took from the spec, we changed, and other people have reported success in doing this. So we think that this plus the maturity of, we didn't really have to change much. We've gone through, we've looked for typos, we fixed a few. So we'd like to go to working group last call after this meeting and get this draft on the progression. So that's pretty good for this one draft. Second draft is in a much more nebulous state. So this is draft IETF-NTP Runtime Ecosystem 00. It's got more complications. So it's talking about misissuance. What does it mean for a server to be honest? What does it mean to be dishonest? How do you report if you suspect a server is dishonest because you have measurements from different servers that disagree with each other? Similar to CT, we have servers, we have clients, we have auditors, and clients need to have their own policies around what they consider acceptable for servers. Are they going to trust servers with certain uptimes? Where is uptime going to be? Kind of beyond this. But I think it needs more input from people who aren't just the draft authors. And beyond sort of contributing the spec, it would be helpful if you would set up more servers that are supporting this version of the protocol or previous version or the wire format drafts version, not the old one from Google, and more auditors. We don't currently have any auditors, and we need that for the ecosystem to work. We need to know that someone's checking up on the honesty of servers. And I'll freely admit I'm complicit here. Cloudflare's runtime service is still on the Google version. That will hopefully change sometime. So I think now it's time for discussion, and there's a couple questions that I sort of want some input on. Who's interested in this work beyond sort of the usual suspects from other places? Who wants to implement this? Are there applications that we should be considering that we aren't yet, that sort of need more? And other sort of questions and comments about any aspect of the drafts. So with that, I think I'll stop presenting and we'll hand it over for questions. Or I can just leave this on until.
Okay, any questions or comments? None? Ah, great. Go ahead, Rich.
So how useful is this without the auditors in the ecosystem? I mean, is it good enough to get like a first pass of what the time is? Or, I mean, how much of beyond the wire protocol do we have to actually establish to be minimally viable product, as it were?
So I think for absolute minimum, if there was another server that implemented rough time and a handful of auditors, and sort of we had a format for defining the detection, that would be enough. I think it would be a minimum of 3 servers implementing the protocol, because then you could tell which one was dishonest. If you just have 2, you don't know. And at that point, we would be able to say, look, these 3 servers are giving you the right time. You know they're giving you the right time. You know that if one of them lies, you'll detect it. And at that point, we can go to some of the browser implementers and be like, here's the solution to your certificate error woes. Here's the solution to short-lived certificates.
Makes a lot of sense. I tend to agree with what you're saying.
Okay. I'm looking through this list. So one of the questions that Watson has asked is interest in implementing. Do we have anybody here who's publicly willing to say they're interested in implementing? Hi, James, go ahead. I can't hear you yet, so are you speaking? Oh, here comes. Oh, now you're gone. Why don't you try again, James? And Eric is in the queue, so go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say that if no one else from Google steps up, I'd like to see that someone from Google does it, and it might be me, but I'll need to talk to some folks.
Oh, James says, please carry on. James, you could put your comment or your question in the chat as well. That would work. All right. Well, that was pretty easy. So Watson, I think we can do the working group last call. I guess the quick question for Eric is, would it simplify things for you if we did it after rechartering or before, or does it matter?
I think we can try them simultaneously.
Excellent.
I think the chartering will just be a formalism when we get to the IESG, hopefully.
Okay. All right. So I guess with that, so you'll see a working group last call on the base rough time document, and the ecosystem. We ask for people to review that and provide any comments. That'd be great. Thank you very much, Watson. So that takes us back to the next item on the agenda is the way that Dieter and I generally build our agendas as we go, and we look at what documents have been updated since the last meeting, and then what topics that we feel we need to talk about. So the next one is a draft that Miroslav has put forward on NTP over PTP. And Miroslav is not here. Is there anybody that wishes to talk to this draft? This might be like the quickest NTP meeting ever at this rate. Okay, I suggest that folks take a look at that one and review it. The next topic is the update on the NTP Charter. I sent a draft of the charter to the mailing list. I received very few comments on it. I did receive one suggested edit from Rich, which I've incorporated. If there are no further discussions on the charter, I think it's ready to go, Eric. If you're, what's the process you would like us to use to get it moved forward?
I was going to have a pass if everyone was generally satisfied with the kind of contents. I was going to try to have a look, and maybe we could trade some edits real quick, do one more loop through the working group, and then I'll take it to the IESG where we'll suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
Okay.
And then we'll get what we get. Was
Okay.
what I was.
What you were planning on?
Yeah.
I did not. Okay, Doug, you're in the queue. Go ahead.
Just want to say I thought it is very appropriately flexible to cover a lot of different timing related work, and I think that's what's needed. So we very much support it.
Do we want to keep the name NTP if probably a majority of the working group at this point is interested in other protocols? I've been saying we should name it time sync. It's accurate no matter how you spell it.
So Eric and I had a really short conversation, or Eric and Dieter and I had a short conversation on this, and we were going to change it to network time protocols and add an S to the end. To keep the same acronym. We had previously talked about changing the name, and I didn't know how much confusion that would cause. So what do folks think about that subtle change? Go ahead, Heiko.
Can you hear me? Anybody? I'm not sure if it's working.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not sure if it would be worth the, let's say, administrative hassle to change it. So I would be in favor of just keeping the old name and leave everything as it is, mailing list names and data tracker links and so on.
Okay. Watson?
Changing names is, I'm going to second what Heiko said. Changing names is extraordinarily difficult. We'll never catch all the old places that need to be fixed. If all we do is add an S at the end, that's fine, but changing the abbreviation is going to cause all sorts of issues with list names and old drafts. It's going to be a mess. Better not.
Okay, Rich?
I tried
Go
to
ahead,
get
Rick.
the name changed for the SPASM mailing list since the group is LAMPS. And speaking with the tools people, it's a no-go. You can, not NTP NTP whatever. It's got to be as long as it's spelled NTP. That's the list, the mailing list name. You just can't move it.
Okay. Well, that was why I thought Eric's suggestion to just add an S to the end was S to the end of the name of the working group, not to the end of the acronym. So it's network time protocols, which is very subtle, but I think that would work. Numerous time protocols. I think the other thing somebody said was that we would primarily be working on non-NTP protocols, and I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I see we're primarily still going to be working on NTP and NTP related protocols, network historical NTP. All right. So with that, the draft charter is on the mailing list, and we will update it with Eric's comments and send it through the working group one more time, and then hopefully send it forward. So we had a really productive virtual interim meeting, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks ago, and we had a bunch of conversation on NTPv5. We have no new drafts since then, so we went ahead and put it on the agenda, but we don't have any new drafts to specifically to discuss. And so I don't want people to forget that we're working on it, but I also haven't asked anybody in particular to talk about it. So is there anything in particular people want to talk about related to NTPv5? Go ahead, Doug.
Well, I think one of the a non-trivial topic that has to be worked on to move the NTP v5 draft forward is security. How is that going to be handled? Or there's a notion that we'll just say you have to have security, and here's a list of other documents, any of which is applicable, or is there going to be a default security that we define right in the document? Or, that it's sort of wide open still.
Right. Go ahead, James.
Just a clarifying question for Doug. When you talk about that, which draft are you talking about, or are you talking about a hypothetical specification?
Miroslav's proposal.
Ah, okay. The reason I mention that is because one of the things on my to-do list for the requirements draft is to piece together a fairly rudimentary threat model to at least define what things we're going to worry about or not worry about, for that matter. And I think that would set the boundaries in terms of what kind of technical implementation would be needed.
I agree. I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the beyond the conversations in our virtual interim meetings, we have the two drafts. We have James's requirements document, and we have Miroslav's contribution. So I thought at some point, Daniel, you had written something. I don't know if I'm imagining that.
Yeah, it wasn't in the form of an ID, but it was a gesture that I linked to on the mailing list a few years ago.
Okay. Okay, that's why I remembered it and couldn't find it. So is there any, and when we get to the end of this, we'll talk about like next steps. And I think one of the things, I think the combination of the time of this meeting and a few other things have resulted in we don't have any we didn't have a lot of new contributions for this meeting. So perhaps we will discuss virtual interim scheduling, see if we can get that conversation moving forward. Anything else on NTP v5? So the NTS for PTP is to a certain extent in the same state. We have no updated IDs on that yet. We have the contribution from Heiko, and we have the contribution from Martin Langer. I believe, Martin, you're planning on an update in 3 or 4 weeks. You should be able to go ahead, Martin.
Okay. Yeah, that's correct. I plan to provide an update next month. So there are many small changes, and currently we have no further update yet.
Okay. And Doug, you were in the queue?
Okay, there, I'm unmuted. Yeah, I wanted to throw it out there. I'm open to ideas on how we can get a sense for what the consensus is on, do we want to pursue one of these two proposals or something else? How do we, because it'd be nice to like get everyone behind a direction and say, okay, this is what we're going to try to do, but I'm not sure how to organize that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to organize that either, and I'd be happy to get suggestions. Watson?
issues. I think one of the issues is that we're trying to boil the ocean. There's so many ways PTP can be deployed, some of which map less cleanly onto the structure we have with NTS, some of which map more cleanly, and identifying the cases that we're going to start with and try and get something out of is, I think, this place to start. But that's obviously been hard.
So, go ahead, Heiko.
Yeah, I think there was a suggestion. I don't know, a couple of days ago or maybe 2 weeks ago, in the mailing list, that Martin might want to split his document into multiple parts. I think what we currently look at is a security mechanism for multicast PTP, a security mechanism for unicast PTP, and I think the third topic would be a protocol, basically how NTS key exchange servers talk to the let's say NTP or NTP servers or PTP servers, if they are operating in a, let's say, distributed model. And I think I would be in favor of that, and I think Martin already indicated he would be okay with doing that, and that might make it a lot easier to discuss those three topics instead of having, let's say, a pretty big, pretty large draft with a lot of topics, and I'm a little bit afraid that that will take quite some time to work on that. So I would be in favor of splitting this up into multiple documents and take up each topic on its own.
Okay, I think one of the lessons we learned in NTS was, I mean, we tried for a long time to do all of the NTP modes of service in a single document, and we were not successful. I think splitting it up is fine. I think the risk you run is that you don't get back to the modes of service that had less traction, or not modes of service in the context of PTP, but for example, when we split out server client, we expected to go back and do the others, and we've never gotten any contributions on that. So go ahead, Watson.
I think that's a feature of a split process, not a bug. If the other modes are creating problems with standardizing, or isn't the impetus to move them forward in terms of the need, then chopping them out is the right thing to do. And having a split set of documents helps you realize that, versus getting tied into debates and never asking the question, well, do we actually care enough to do it?
That's true. I think the concern at the time, although since the other modes of service have not been forthcoming, was that if we define something for server client, that would ultimately prohibit us from solving the other problems. But I think you were right. It helps narrow the field when you're unable to make a decision. So Doug, I don't know that we answered your original question. I mean, Heiko outlined the three documents that he felt we were going to be moving forward on. Martin indicated that he was going to provide an update. I think the next step is to, oh, go ahead, Doug.
This would be a good time for Martin perhaps to chime in and say whether this is a task that he's interested in taking up, or otherwise we would need another volunteer.
Oh, sorry. You mean to split the draft?
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yes. I think I discussed it with Weiner, and maybe we should just discuss it together. But yeah, I think it's possible.
Yeah, we don't mean to put you on the spot here, Martin, but it's something that should be thought about. Okay, so with that, so looking at, so the minutes will have a clear articulation of what the three possible partitions of the document would be. Martin will have a new document coming out in 4 to 6 weeks, and we will have something to discuss at the next virtual interim related to this. Oh, something in the chat. Oh, not related. So is there anything else that people wish to discuss related to NTP v5? Okay, so the next item on the agenda, we also don't have any current ID updates for, and that's the NTS for PTP. We have, oh wait, I was talking about NTS for PTP. Never mind. So that brings me to any other business. I can't even claim it's late compared to all of you folks from Europe that are on this call. Sorry about that. Is there any other business before we talk about scheduling and way forward? Okay, so with that, we're at the end of July now. Between now and November, I think it would probably make sense. So the IETF, the next full IETF meeting, IETF112, is scheduled to be the week of November 8th. Oh, Doug is joining the queue. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, and I think the scheduling, when you get into the fall, there's a lot of events of various kinds that many of us would be attending that are virtual or not virtual. So it might be good to do a doodle poll or something to try to find a time, a day or half a day or whatever that would be not in the middle of some other meeting or conference.
Okay. I don't know if it's like a year and a half of virtual meetings, but I'm finding scheduling to be like one of those really painful tasks. Do we think we want to try 1 or 2 meetings? I think we need to allow probably at least 6 weeks or at least 5 weeks, because there's no point if we're not going to have any new drafts to discuss. I think, well, I guess we would have the working group last call on the rough time, so we would have that material to discuss. But thoughts on 1 versus 2? Oh, there's Heiko. Go ahead, Heiko.
Yeah, I think 2 would probably be better. Just a comment regarding the draft. I'm for the NTS for Unicast PTP draft. I'm a little bit stuck because I don't know what the future of this draft will be. So I don't really see any comments or any significant comments, let's say, that basically discuss the technical aspects of the draft. Last discussions were mainly focused around or circled around whether this makes is worthwhile or not, and so until I don't think there's a lot of stuff I can address in an update for the draft. So and I assume that, or I have the feeling that that's more or less the same for Martin's draft. There's some comments, but not, let's say, a big bunch that justifies that would justify an update. So I think we are a little bit stuck due to the fact that the status of the draft is not yet, or is not changing, and that's probably one of the reasons why there are no document updates.
Right. So, so ordinarily the next step would be a call for adoption. Maybe what we could do would be a consensus call on the plan to pull apart the whole space into the 3 pieces. So we could just do a consensus call on that. And then we would be able, then you would be able to say, you know, I'm providing this document for the unicast solution, for example. Does that make sense? Go ahead, Doug.
I think that does make sense. I think the other big sort of general question is it more important to, when it comes to unicast PTP security, is it more important to make something that is sort of clean and the most sense for PTP by itself, or is it more important to make the PTP and NTP unicast security be as similar as possible? Because those are the 2 drafts. That's kind of the general starting assumptions in those drafts. And you know, if we had consensus on those, and we know which of those approaches to follow up on.
Okay, so we could try to write, or we could do a couple of high-level consensus calls. We would want to work on being sure that we got the questions right. So that there are basically 2 questions. 1, should we partition it into 3 pieces? And 2, do we want to be more or less? How close? How do you write that? Do you want it to be close to NTP or not? Did you, in your I don't remember, Doug, in your presentation at the last meeting, did you have, didn't you have a concise way of stating that? Perhaps you could send me a draft.
Look, and yeah, so I'll take that as an action item to go back and to look at that and I'll try to phrase it in a way that you could put it out to the group, that would be, you know, accurately reflect the 2 proposals and be kind of a simple thing, that conceptual thing that people can say, okay, I think we should go this way, or I think we should go that way.
Yeah, if you could take that as an action to help Dieter and I write that, and then Dieter and I will take it as an action to try and have a couple high-level consensus calls on that general question that would help provide guidance to Martin and Heiko on moving forward.
Yeah, and I'll include Martin and Heiko in that discussion so that they can point out if I'm not really making sense.
Okay, that would be great. One thing I wanted to be sure if people missed it in the chat was that Daniel did point out, provide a pointer to the NTPv5 sketch that he wrote a couple years ago. So Dieter, I think we probably want to capture that and stick it in the minutes from the chat, and others who might not have noticed it in the chat should probably take a quick look. Okay, so so back to scheduling, we will work on a doodle poll for 2 virtual interims between now and November. And let's see. There's other, okay, that's not related to too many chat windows going at the moment. So with that, the last thing that I neglected to put on the agenda was the one remaining document from the TikTok working group, which is the enterprise profile. And that has fallen off the table yet again, but we will put it back on the table, and hopefully we will get it done real soon. Go ahead, Doug.
Is there anything, as one of the authors on that, is there anything that you need from us on that, or is it just really in the IETF administrative court at this point?
At this stage, I need to write the Shepherd write-up. So if anybody wants to help me with that write-up, that would be great. And that's where it is right now. So, and what was I?
Karen, I could help with that, but I've never written one, so I have no idea what's supposed to go in them. But I could at least take a look at something you write and
Okay,
make sure it accurately reflects the document.
that sounds good. Maybe we can schedule some time over, not this week, but maybe in the next couple of weeks, just to get together and work on that at the same time, so it'll be a little bit more productive than asynchronous. All right. So with that, do we have any other business for today? All right, I'd like to thank everybody for coming, especially those of you in Europe that are up at really early hours or late hours. And stay tuned to the mailing list.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Good night, Heiko.